There we go. We've got our it's not quite coming up right. Well, we will just start right here then, by golly. Welcome back to ECE 113. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you guys are learning a lot with the assignments and with piddling around in Pinterest. And I hope some of you have started looking for activities for your activity cards as well. I have to tell you, I know several of these announcements have gone out, but I want to really bring it up because it seems like I've got quite a few people are still missing their FAFSA for the 2016-2017 school year. Leonda's been sending out a bunch of notices, and I know sometimes, guys, you get emails and you're just like, oh no, it's another email, I'm not even going to read it. Well, you need to be sure and read this one. The deadline for the FAFSA for next year was April 30th, 2016. They're probably needing a copy of your taxes if you're under the age of 24, if you're not married, if you do not have children you're financially responsible for, and you're not a veteran. So be sure, complete your FAFSA online or contact the campus. They'll help you fill it out. They're really fantastic. The new award year, this is the critical number here, guys, is July 1st, 2016. So that means the current class that you're in through the June section, through the part of the June session, you'll be starting another one in, I believe, 2 weeks. Yes, because it's gone by so fast. And that session will actually extend past that July 1st date. So I don't want you to be in the middle of a class and then get locked out of that class, because that can happen. So be sure to get your FAFSA completed and cleared by July 1st. So not just completed, but completed and cleared by July 1st, because I want to see all your smiling faces in here, okay? I don't want to lose anybody. That's what I'm saying. So a little quick reminder. Some of the announcements were at week 3. We are now over halfway in our course. Of course, I love grading the Pinterest assignments. Feel free to work ahead. I know several of you have already done your boards for week 3 and also week 4. That's fantastic. Please know that I generally don't grade ahead with the postings, and so even though you may have already posted the week 4 Pinterest assignment, you've already built that board, I usually don't grade it until the actual week that it's due. So I don't want you to worry there if you're not seeing points come up. Also, our final project, you'll be building your 25 activity cards. And if you looked at last week's live lecture recording, which was actually a recording from the previous course where we talked about it, you'll know a little, you have an idea of what's going on, kind of what to expect with those activity cards, and we're going to talk about the specifics tonight on what needs to be on each one. Of course, I always like to get you ready, get you jump started, and get you working on that project. Before I go to the next slide, I want to tell you guys, graduation was amazing. And anybody that's in live lecture, did anybody get to go to graduation? No hands being raised there? No? I got to tell you, it was amazing. Here's the thing. I went to several graduations of my own. I've been to NEO-A&M in Miami. I've been to NSU in Tahlequah, 2 different graduations there. My husband graduated from Missouri Southern State University in Joplin. Been to that graduation. Let me think, what else? I can't even count the number of high school graduations I've attended, but that's quite a few college graduations to base this off of, okay? The CCC, OTC, Clary Sage College graduation, it's all combined, and it just blew all the previous ones out of the water. It was so much fun, and one of the big things that I loved was that they were able to decorate the graduation caps. And so you saw all different types of paint and bling and words and scriptures and colors just all over the top of those hats. They had a competition on whose was the best. I thought that was great because so many colleges really sort of thumb their nose at it. They're like, no, you can't decorate your hats. Well, we're all for it. It was great. There was music. There was multimedia. There were thousands of people surrounding us in the ORU Center. We had great speakers. We had I had 4 different student speakers that stood up on the stage and talked about their experiences through college, how they got there, what they went through, and they were just really fantastic. Then, of course, we did the whole walk across the stage, get your diploma, shaking hands. Our college president gave all the department heads fist bumps as we went across the stage, so I felt pretty cool with that. And then lastly, at the very end was the confetti cannon. When that went off and the music started, it was a party. So I just want to give you guys an idea of what to look forward to. You know, start looking up ideas on how you're going to decorate that graduation cap if you want to. You know, and so that you have an idea of what to expect. This was my first graduation with CCC, and anyway, you can tell I loved it, can't you? It was great, and the next one will, of course, be next May. If you graduate in November, December, January, February, you will get your diploma in the mail, but if you want to actually walk, you're allowed to do that in May. It doesn't matter when you graduated through the previous year. You can come around and still walk in May and just go through that ceremony. Your friends can see, your parents can see, your kids can see you graduate. You've already paid for your capping gown. It's part of your fees, so you might as well do it. Plus, I'll get to meet you in person. I rarely get to do that with my online students, especially the ones that are out of state. So, of course, I want to give you a big hug. That's how I am. Okay? All right, let's hop on, guys, to the student question of the week. Can I use my book as a resource for the activity card final project? Yes, you can. You can use your book for up to 10 of your activity cards, so please do not use them for all 25 cards, but you can use it for up to 10 of them. Also, the boards that you have already been building on Pinterest, if you go to them, you'll probably see that you have some fantastic activities that are already there that you could use for this assignment. I had told someone else a good idea might be making a separate board for activity card ideas, and then as you're pinning for the weekly assignments, you could always be pinning activities into that separate board and keeping track of them. So once you had 25, you would be ready to make your cards. So you need to start on those pretty soon. Has anybody started on theirs yet? Have you started gathering activities or working on your cards? Yep. Awesome, Desiree. Awesome. Not yet, Opal, but you are soon, I know. And Jasmine, gathering ideas. Okay, fantastic. That's where you start. That'll work. That's great. For sure soon, exactly. It's kind of a fun project, but I think the hardest part is the typing up and getting the cards, getting the format right so that they look similar and so that you don't have words all over your cards virtually. So let's go a little bit more into that really quick since we're on the subject. Activity cards. You're going to have 25 altogether, and at the top of each card, I'm going to show you an example here in a minute that has everything on there that you need, so you'll have a good visual representation of it. You're going to have the title of the activity, the age group that you could work with, objectives, And I'd like for you to have at least 2 to 4 objectives on each card. So what are they going to learn from it? What experience are they going to have? You're going to put the materials that you'd need, the length of the activity, the source of the activity, if it was online or with your book. You may have a separate book, in fact, that you've used, that's fine. And then also on each card, you're going to have an overview of how to do it. And if you've done it before or you know somebody that's done this activity, I want you to add the assessment as well. So what we're looking for is a one-stop shopping place to see an activity, what you might use for, how you do it, everything that you need. So we want everything gathered in this one place in case you want to do this activity, right? Okay. If we come down to number 3, that section, this is where it gets a little difficult, and I highly recommend, I'll use my smiley face tonight, I highly recommend that you put your cards together using this order, because I think it will be easier for you to track how many you've completed in each category, okay? So for instance, I want you to visualize. You might be using PowerPoint to build these cards. You might be using Google Slides to build these cards. Either of those would be fantastic resources to use. Okay, so you might have, let's pretend you're using Google Slides. You might have a title slide that says outdoor, and you're going to have 10 outdoor cards. Right? So you're going to have 10 outdoor activities. 3 of those need to be outdoor activities that could be done with infant and toddlers. 4 need to be preschool. And 3 need to be primary or early school age. Okay? Then you have 15 indoor activities. Now notice that we have more indoor activities than we have outdoor activities. We tend to do more inside than we do outside. So 15. 4 of those are going to be infant and toddler. There's my phone. 4 are going to be infant and toddler. 7 are going to be preschool. And 4 are going to be primary, okay? So those are your basic categories, your basic age groups, and mixed all amongst those 10 outdoor and those 15 indoor activities, you're going to have a variety of these artistic categories. So there's not an exact number of these, but I would like each of these to be represented in outdoor and indoor activities. So you're going to have creative movement activities. You're going to have something maybe with some music or some arm movements, maybe a song that has gestures that you do. You're going to need something with sensory play, and an example of that might be the rice and bean tubs, where they get to play in it and play with the measuring cups. They love this so much because it's highly sensory. They're getting to touch and smell and see. You're going to have drama activities to do with the children, and this might be funner with the primary age group because they're a little more, easier to direct. You're going to have literature activities, anything dealing with a book. And you're also going to have kind of the more usual ones, art and music. So out of these 25 cards, I want to see these categories represented. Okay? So does that make sense? Can you kind of picture this thing going together? I don't want it to be confusing for you guys. I don't want it to be a huge challenge. I want it to be this amazing resource that you're able to use in your classroom, right? Whether you're already teaching or you're soon to be teaching, I want this to be things that you can really use, okay? All right, so activities cards. And it's going to be graded for effort, for completeness. I want to see how well you've organized it. And gosh, I think that's about it. So if you guys have any questions on the activities card, these will be due in our final week, Sunday at midnight in week 4. Okay, so you have basically, what about 10 days left to get this done. Chop it up, do it a little bit at a time. Remember, eat the elephant one bite at a time, and you can get it done. Here's an activity card example. So this one has everything on it that you need on your activity card. Because I noticed the one that's on My Course Connection doesn't include the overview and the assessment at the bottom, and I want you to be sure and include those 2 items. So if we click through this, let me see, let me get my smiley face again. We've got the name of the activity, animal tag. We've got, it is an outdoor activity, and it is for primary age level, right? This is activity card number 5, so I'd like for you to number them. We've got 4 objectives to animal tag, and remember, I'd like to see anywhere from 2 to 4 objectives on each activity card, okay? So our objectives for animal tag: teach safe tagging practices. We're not going to smack each other on the head, are we? No tripping. There's all these things that we can learn through this process. Using a soft hand is what's called. Develop hand-eye coordination. Practice and learn animal sounds. Increase fine and gross motor skills. Oh, there's Lita. Fantastic. Hi, Lita. Also, the length of time, it's going to take about 30 minutes to play this game. Here's our source over to the right, playworks.org. I would like for you to pay attention to that website because it's a great resource. In fact, if you have a pen or paper next to you right now, you might write it down, playworks.org. Great source for activity cards. Hint, hint. Okay? Okay, 30 minutes, the overview. So this goes through how to play the game, how it ends at the end. So you've got all the basics step by step. So if someone had never played this game before, they could do it by looking at your card. Okay? Oh, no problem, Lita. I'm glad you made it. And then lastly, on the assessment, we have this game is very active and noisy. So from that assessment, you would probably go, okay, we're probably not going to play that right before nap time, right? This might be good if they're trying to get their energy out. How about the overview? Oh, and the overview, it really depends on the activity, Jessica. It doesn't have to be even complete sentences if it's not necessary. As long as you can read through it and understand the process of the activity, then that's how much you need. You might have a friend read it and say, does that make sense? So that they could, if they felt like they could do it themselves, yeah. And then also, let me see, the children really enjoyed it. Great energy user. So you might, when you're doing your activity cards, you put notes to yourself. And just like when we're doing lesson plans, it's always important to do an assessment at the end and say, hey, was this a good activity? Did the children enjoy it? Are there things that I need to change for next time? So we always want to reflect. We will think, I'm going to remember this, I'm going to store it in my brain, but maybe a month later, when you come back to that activity, you will have completely forgotten whatever little change you wanted to make. So be sure and write it down. Okay, so there's your activity card example. If you need to look at this one again, in fact, I may send this one out to you because I think it's a great example. Let me make a note to myself. email examples. I talk to myself and I write notes to myself just all day long. Okay, Chapter 10, Physical Development through the Curriculum. We actually have just a few slides to go over. I love the topic of physical development. It is so important. We're going to talk mainly about gross motor development, fine motor development, and sensory perceptual development. Now, I know you guys are pretty familiar with these terms. However, sensory perceptual development may not be one that you're super familiar with. This is the process in which the child develops the skill and ability to take in, interpret, and respond to information from the environment. So whenever a child is playing, they're using most of their senses, sometimes all at the same time. And these senses build on this experience they're having. They can see the ball, they can smell the grass outside, they can hear the birds chirping or the directions of the teacher, they can touch the ball, they can say words to the other students. So you can see how all the senses sort of come into play in physical activity. We also talk about fine motor versus gross motor skills, and this is pretty basic, right? The picture looks like a puzzle. Well, the other one or this one? So fine motor skills, what mainly comes to mind are the fingers, and let me get my hand over here, the fingers and the wrist. Those are sort of fine movements, and you might even include the toes, because we can do some fine motor development with the toes by having them pick up scarves with their toes. And it's a great balance game too, but that's a little muscle that we don't sometimes work out. And then gross motor skills, oh wait, let me back up. Fine motor skills, we also want to include the mouth, because this is a muscle and this is a motor skill that's being developed through speaking and through eating, and through, when a child is an infant or a toddler, through mouthing things. And I mean chewing on toys, chewing on books. They're learning through that experience. They're learning about textures, they're learning about flavors, right? So the mouth is considered a fine motor skill as well. A gross motor skill is when we're using the bigger muscles, the arms, the torso, the legs. Think big muscles, okay? So here's a few examples of activities that promote fine motor skills. Art, of course, playing with clay or Play-Doh really works all those little muscles. Puzzles, blocks, sand boxes. I mentioned the bean boxes earlier. You can use dry beans. Lacing cards, you guys remember those from grade school where you got to run the shoelace through the card and make a shape. Flannel boards, putting stickers on a piece of paper is actually a great fine motor skill, and they love stickers. Your grandmother tried to eat what? Your granddaughter tried to eat a tape box today. Oh no, Lita. I'm sorry. Well, that's an example of a fine motor skill. She she was working on those little muscles. Stickers, using a hole punch, even a 3-hole punch or the smaller one where they make the little pieces of paper out of, I think they call it Chad, are the little circles of paper that come out of hole punches. And threading beads, of course, they love to do that. Now, gross motor skills, outdoor play, active games, playground, climbing on the jungle gym, going down the slide, going up the steps, any type of sport, throwing balls on the during PE or on the playground, dancing, jumping, running, and climbing. All of these are wonderful gross motor skills. Oh, hi, DJ. DJ must be there tonight, huh, Lita? Okay, so how, the how of early childhood education, a little bit more about physical development. We go through, as little humans, we go through different stages of physical development. So let's go back to infants. Infants up to about 1 year go through what's called a reflexive movement phase. So they're basically just reflexive movements. They're moving their head, moving their arms, moving their legs, sucking on a bottle. There are things that they instinctively do that they don't necessarily think about, oh, I need to do this, right? The palmar grasp. You think about all these different movements that they do. Next, they move into rudimentary movement phase, reaching for something on purpose, grasping, releasing objects like toys, sitting, standing, starting to walk at about 1 to 2 years old. Now remember, these are always just really general numbers, and you might have an 8-month-old that's walking. I've seen it happen before. Or you might have a 14 or 16-month-old that isn't walking yet. So please remember that these are general guidelines. We also have a fundamental movement phase, the next stage, ages 2 to 3 up to 6 and 7. They've got a little more increased control over their gross and fine motor skills, running, jumping, throwing, and catching. They're getting better at it. Children in this phase first learn skills in isolation, so basically on their own they learn about some of these, and then from another, maybe they have, you know, a cousin or mom or dad that wants to encourage them to jump. Just learning how to jump off the floor, getting off the floor and then landing is a major skill to develop. And they combine these skills and they become a little more coordinated at this age. Now we hop up to our last one. Specialized movement phase begins at about 7 years old and continues through the teenage years and even into adulthood. More increased control and more coordination. Now, a lot of people that teach physical activity, maybe it's karate, maybe it's competitive sports, say that this is about the good age, around 7, to where they can really pick up some of these skills and start to master them because their body is ready for it, right? And I know you guys have seen the video of the little girl bouncing 2 basketballs at one time, and this girl has some skills on Facebook. And she looks like, I can't remember her age, I'm wanting to say she's 8, but you can tell she's been practicing for a long time. Putting a lot of time in the specialized movement phase. Okay, so reflexive, rudimentary, fundamental, and then into specialized movement. All right, let's look at body control really quick. An infant, if we start in the center, can basically, you know, move their chest a little bit, pull their head up by about 2 months, of course. But a lot of their other movements, as far as their arms and their legs go, are still pretty reflexive. They're not even realizing at 2 months that those arms and legs are theirs. In fact, they'll scare themselves with an arm or a leg sometimes. Sitting and supporting themselves around 6 to 8 months. Standing while holding on to something around 8 to 10 months. Creeping and crawling 8 to 10 months. I have a niece that she started just 2 weeks ago. She started rocking back and forth while on her hands and knees. She's at about, in fact, I think she is 9 months old. She's rocking back and forth, and within the next week, she started moving her arms and legs, and so she's starting to crawl. So we're just at that right age. Walking when led by another person or maybe holding on to a toy at 11 to 12 months. Standing, walking alone 12 to 15. Again, general guidelines, they can always be a little different. The 6 basic elements of body control. So I want you to picture kids that you know maybe below the age of 5, and think about what they can do. So if they're over the age of 1, they're probably walking a little bit. 1 to 2, we're walking pretty good. Maybe by about 2 to 3, we're starting to run a little bit. I know some have ran earlier. You have to chase them in Walmart. Jumping usually comes along next. Again, it's a hard skill. One of my good friends, her son, wasn't able to jump until about 3 to 4, but he wore braces on his ankles, and it really hampered his ability to bend in that area. So once he was able to take his braces off, he was able to work that a little bit better, and you should have seen his face light up the first time he hopped or started jumping. Hopping is continuously jumping, maybe while skipping along or maybe even in place. Then we have throwing a ball, and lastly we have balancing. Did you guys have balance boards when you were in grade school? Do you remember having a balance board in gym? No? Oh, you always fell, Desiree. I'm sorry. Well, that's a good example that, you know, balancing is a big skill, and it was too long ago. Not in gym, but you had one at home. Oh, that's great, Sarah. Yeah, a lot of people will have them in their backyard. Maybe they just built it out of a 4x4 and put it up on a couple bricks or on another piece of wood. You can see this one's maybe a 1x4 or something like that. And this is a great thing to practice. And I remember as a kid just loving to walk along things and loving to balance. And then when I got into gymnastics, the balance beam seemed pretty natural. Although it was a lot more higher up off the ground, I got used to that. So the balance was pretty much there already. That was great. So you may think of, or you may remember hopping and skipping as a kid, maybe skipping down a sidewalk. Sometimes you trip on things, we'd stumble a little bit, but that's the process. Even whenever you fall, you learn a little bit more about balancing and about movement. So, in fact, these accidents wound up being pretty important to us. Manual control. Okay, now we're going to reach out into arm and leg movement area, mainly hands. Voluntary hand and arm movement begins around 1 to 3 months, so they can actually control the arms themselves. Reach for and grasp a nearby object at about 3 to 4 months. The pincer grasp, being able to actually bring those fingers together by about 9 months. And begin taking off own clothing, placing objects inside each other, moving spoon around mouth, and scribbling at about 12 months. So these are all guidelines that we need to be aware of when we're planning physical activities for different age groups. We want to pick things that are appropriate for them, that they will be able to hopefully do either with a little practice or instantly. We don't want them to be frustrated and not be able to participate in an activity. So we have to think about each child and if they're really ready for this yet. How we can support physical development, having good outdoor play areas, having blocks. Every center I've ever gone into always has some type of a block area because children love them so much. Manipulatives, water and sand play. In fact, water and sand play is required for a lot of your licenses. They want you to have this. That's right. Sometimes it takes a little bit later too, Lita. That's right. And you have to really practice on those to work on them. So I want you to think about now, so let's think about that infant and toddler age group. From some of these ideas, how would you support physical development when working with infants and toddlers. Think about, consider you're in an infant and toddler classroom as a teacher, and maybe you've got a certain point in the day where you want to focus more on physical development. You tell me, what are some things you could do with infants and toddlers? Give me some ideas, guys. And I'm going to double check names while you're thinking. I want to be sure and get everyone down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I think I do. So what could you do to support or increase or encourage physical development with infants and toddlers? Oh, tummy time is perfect, Desiree. Yes. Yes, and this isn't just a good skill, it's a safety skill as well. With infants, that they get turned over onto their tummy to be able to raise that head, it's a great muscle to work on. Yeah. Sarah, follow the leader, have them jump, skip, hop, wave their arms would be great for toddlers. Yes, you're right. You're right, and they love copying each other, you know. Jasmine, having stretching lessons, that is such a good idea. You know, we tend to think about all these active things that we can do, but yes, infants can do stretches as well with a little help from us. We can bring the little legs up to the stomach with gentle pushes. We can help work on those little thigh muscles, help stretch them out, moving the foot back slightly to work on the calf muscles. Bringing the arms across their tummy to work on stretching those arm muscles as well. So that's great. I'm glad that you brought that up. Lita, moving their arms and legs and dancing. Yes, and you know, one that I always did with my kids was to grab the feet and go jog, 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 moving their legs back and forth and saying the words over and over, and then to pretend like they're jogging. When we're outside, have lots of toys with my kids, like bikes and scooters. Yes, I think it helps. I think it does too. I especially love the scooters that are little kid friendly. They don't roll too fast. They've got a handle so they can grab onto them. Great for balance. Great for developing those big muscles too, Sarah. Good example. Well, great. And then on our second question, how would you support physical development when working with children with disabilities? Now, I want you to think, you know, there's many different disabilities that a child in your classroom might have. You might have one in a wheelchair. You might have one with limited sight or limited hearing. What's something different that you could do? Now, I also want to add a child with autism to this group as well, because we've spoken briefly about how activities may need to be altered for children with autism. So how can we do that? Do more, you could do hand activities for maybe for those that couldn't stand up. Good idea, Jessica, yeah. In fact, I used to go to a Tai Chi group, and my teacher taught in a nursing home where most of her Tai Chi students were in wheelchairs, and they just did the arm movements, but they absolutely loved it. Yeah. And Sarah, I worked with a boy who has cerebral palsy, and he has braces on his legs. Helping him stretch every morning made all the difference. Oh, that is fantastic. He would be really tight all day and not be able to move well. That's exactly, Sarah. Their little muscles really tighten up. They do. And in fact, you know, stretching several times a day is definitely a good idea for children with cerebral palsy. Good. And of course, all the other children could do a lot of the stretches with them as well. They can copy a lot of the stretches. Working with arm and leg movements, yeah, definitely. Definitely. So maybe They can't move the arms or the legs on their own, but you can help do that for them to help move those muscles. You notice we're going into a wide variety. We never know. Each children is special in their own way. So going back specifically to, you did that with DJ. Oh, great. Fantastic, Lita. Okay, going back to autism, it could be that you have a small group of autistic children. Maybe they're off to themselves in your classroom. Think of a physical activity. What would you need to change or possibly change for an autistic child? What can we do to help them? Oh, there's Marilyn. Hi, Marilyn. Exactly, Sarah. Exactly. Oh, that's okay, Marilyn. Again, we're glad you make it. Hey, just hop in anytime. We're always open for that, all right? So with autistic children, you may need to bring the music down. Maybe you're doing a dancing activity where some kids would really love that music being cranked up, but an autistic child would not do well in that environment. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but a lot of the movie theaters around the Tulsa area have started offering autism-friendly movies. They're turned down a little bit. They're a little more low-key. There's not as many people in the theater. So, you have to take into account some of these things. Yep, a little bit quieter. Maybe movements that aren't quite so fast, depending on how they are about that. Very good. And you may want to do an activity where they can spread out more, not be as close. Yes, very good idea, actually. Not touching each other. Autistic children may not like games like tag. I totally agree. Where there's a lot of touching. Most of the autistic children I have been around, in fact, they're very much on sensory overload already, and touching just sort of can set that off anymore. It can be a trigger. Yeah, exactly, Brittany. He doesn't like being touched at all, and we want to give them random hugs so bad, but it's really not a calming thing or a great thing. So your brother probably sort of fights hugs, right? They have to be just in the right mood. You catch them on the right day, and maybe you could sneak a big hug in. And that's something that we instinctively do sometimes as an ECE teacher. Let me see. He will sometimes come up to me and give you a high five, yes. And when my son was born, he held him, but that's about it. Yeah. So he had his moments. That's right. So we sort of learn how to live in their world as well, right? I have cousins. I have friends with autistic children. And just working in the schools, each of them is individual, but I've noticed that the touching tends to set a lot of them off. Talking loudly, music that's loud. I've heard it explained that they hear things even louder than they normally are. So even maybe like a tapping with a pen on the table that would be just slightly annoying to us would be like somebody with a hammer banging it on the wall to them. Yeah, so we definitely would have to change some of these things that we do. Okay, early childhood programs should lay the foundation for good health habits. We talked about this on one of our discussion boards this week. I've just started reading those. Physical exercise, nutrition, very, very important. Health, safety, self-care, and you know, all of these things, if you think about it, it can be very overwhelming. All of the things that we teach and go over in the ECE classroom, but they are all so important. I know many of you noticed or mentioned what is served in early childhood centers, what is served maybe in a school cafeteria. I think you've probably noticed that they have made changes in the past few years. They didn't go whole wheat on everything, but they do a 50-50 mix usually on breads and rolls now. We're seeing less sweets in the cafeteria, more whole grains, more protein, more fruits and vegetables. So they're trying to set a good example. And you know, I brought up that idea on one of the discussion boards on someone's post that as a teacher, we have to be a good model on the nutrition end as well. So we can't expect our children to eat these good, healthy foods and then us be eating a bag of chips or a bag of cookies in front of them. So it's a nice added incentive for us to do the right thing as well. Stay healthy, stay safety. Safety is so important in our classroom and on the playground. And self-care refers to brushing your teeth, taking showers, taking baths, all those wonderful things. Learning how to trim your own fingernails. You can do that with your grade school kids. Oh, they do whole grain and everything, Lita. Gotcha. Yeah. Now, is it whole grain or is it the 50-50? Because what I have seen is that mix of white and wheat so that the kids are still okay with it. Or is it actual whole grain? Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. And they taste really good, too. Okay, do we have any questions, guys? We talked about, let me see, FAFSA, number 1. If you haven't gotten in your FAFSA yet, you need to do that. July 1st, you want everything turned in and okayed. We talked about our activity cards, physical development, right? We're ready to get amped up with PE in our classroom, no matter what age group we're working with, okay? So any questions right now that you can think of? And if you think of one later, please do email me, text me, Facebook me, whatever that's easiest. I'm glad you guys were here. This is our next to the last live lecture. But of course, we will be having our next one last Thursday with week 4. Goodness gracious. No questions right now? All right, Brittany. Good night. Oh, you saw yoga stuff, Lita. Oh, fantastic. Oh, yeah. Bye, Jasmine. Yeah, I've noticed more and more teachers bringing yoga into the ECE classroom. That's great. Bye, Opal. Bye, Sarah. Bye, Marilyn. Marilyn, you might go back and watch the recording because you missed a little bit, okay? Bye, Jasmine. Sure. All right. Good deal, Marilyn. Sarah, you okay? Okay, good. All right. Have a good night. Good night, Lita.